Hello, I am David W. Parker, and this is Programming Today I Learned. We're looking at Rails once again. We're going to be adding slugs, just like we did to users, to our post model. So we'll walk through that one more time. And we'll go ahead and fix up a little bit of validations on our users as well. Let's go ahead and dive right in. If you don't know, I'm David W. Parker, and I go by Parker. Kind of odd. Anyway, I have create Rails tutorials, Svelte tutorials, beginner stuff, WebGL. And if you like my content, subscribe, that'd be fantastic. And you can subscribe to my Patreon as well as my Buy Me Coffee. And all right, so let's dig in. So let's just look at our coverage here. We have this new show for API v1 posts. We have it fully covered at tests. First thing you're going to do, Rails G migration, add select to posts. It's going to create a file, something like this. Add column to the posts table named slug. It is a string, and we want to go ahead and make sure we have an index on it and it is unique. So before we dig into what we need to do for our post, though, let's look at our user. The one thing we did here is we had these validations, user validations. So we want to make sure our email is unique. Our username is also unique, both those case insensitive. And then here's a few things that I didn't do yet. And I didn't actually do this on post either, but it's very important when you're doing something with friendly or these types of slugs like this. Is in this, we're going to validate the slug is not only numeric. And then we're going to say the same thing for user. And this is just a regular expression that checks to make sure that it's not only digits, only numbers. And then we're also going to make sure that our username requirements are A through Z, upper or lowercase, underscore, dash, and 0 through 9. So we don't want to allow our users to type in anything into their username. We've added a couple of YAMLs here where we basically say the select numbers cannot be only numbers. Please add at least one character. Same thing for username. You could probably reuse that error. And then username must be alphanumeric or underscore dash only and contain at least one character. So those are the YAMLs that we're using for our internationalization. And the reason for this is if you make a username of 2 and you're trying to look up via friendly via 2, but you're trying to have it fall back to ID of 2, then it'll never hit that fallback, and there's never a new way to do it. So as long as you have something like this where it says post.friendly.find, if there's a numeric only slug, it'll never get there. So if you want to have a different endpoint or a different optional way to look up by the ID only without friendly versus with friendly, then you might want to do that, and then you don't have to have these extra validations. I generally prefer to just make sure that the user isn't having an only numeric username, and that's not that big of a deal for them to throw an underscore in there or something else. Funnily enough, I did not add those to the post validations yet, so I will. I'll just do that in a catch-up episode behind the scenes. In our post here now, you can see we have a new column of slug. And we did add the extends friendly ID on it, as well as friendly ID title. So it's going to use the title to generate that slug. And validations we looked at, title already. In our routes here, we're going to have a new posts show route. And in here, this is the only one that's going to use friendly. So we're going to be using ID still for the delete as well as the update. But for the slug, we're going to go ahead and, or the show, we're still going to use the slug. So post.friendlyFind, and then render it out. We don't have any kind of authorization around this, as you could see. And the reason for that is anyone can view any post within this application. We're going to rescue from record not found and return a JSON of API not found or 404 not found for the status of 404. And the going to say not found in our message. So fairly simple. It's going to use the same post show that we're using already. The main difference here is we're not adding any metadata because we're not updating it, we're not deleting it, we're just displaying it. So that's the same there. Our show serializer, we've changed a little bit. We've removed user ID, and we've added this user object that has its own slug, etc. It returns the ID, content, published at, and title. And then in our post request here, we have the new context of getting the API for the slug. This is the show. And we're going to say it returns a status of 404 if not found. So if we're just going to try to get a random one, it's going to check and have a 404. That's created by our rescue here, 404. And we're going to say postback is sending back slug. So we're going to go ahead and create a user, create the post, get the API v1 posts post.slug, making a GET request, getting the value back and see it's 200. And we'll just see that the ID of the data is the same as the post ID. And then we're also going to see that if you send in an ID, and as opposed to the post slug, it also gets the proper one. And of course, this would not be possible if Sony makes a title that is all numeric. So that's going to be a validation I have to add. But if I created one that's called 1234, and then it tried to find 1234, the ID, it would not work. So anyway, that's it for this episode. We have a post now with Slugs, just like before. One thing I didn't cover is if you already have a bunch of posts in your application, you'll have to run something like this. But it would be post.findEach and save, and that'll populate all of your slugs for you. If you have non-unique ones already, it may cause errors, of course. Validation on that slug needs to be unique. Actually, what it will do, and I just totally spaced this, Friendly is really smart enough, if it has the same unique ID, it'll actually just append a UUID to the end of it. So it will add a unique identifier onto the end if it's already taken. So anyway, that's it for this episode. If you go ahead and like and subscribe or contribute on Patreon or buy me a coffee, that'd be great. And I'll see you guys in the next one.